Welcome to the extraordinary meeting of council this afternoon. Do we have any apologies? We will have, I think, we'll have Bonnie again and Peter. Somebody like to really move to be sustained, seconded by David, all in favour will say aye. Not aware of any declarations of interest this afternoon. There are no public forums, petitions or deputations. No notification of extraordinary or urgent business, supplementary reports or other. I'm not aware of any questions. So we'll move to item 6, which is the staff report. And Russell may want to come forward and speak to this item. I know we have two transport committee members here as well. Who probably also want to speak, but the floor is yours, Russell.
First off, thanks, Mr. Chairman, and I don't know whether it's appropriate for me to say thank you for convening this meeting so late in the day to adopt or approve our RLTP, but unfortunately the whole process ran very late as a result of delays through other government departments, etc., which just meant that we couldn't make an earlier meeting for this. So I really do appreciate you taking the time to consider it as a special meeting. So the RLTP has been prepared by the Regional Transport Committee as required. It's been through a submission process, a good healthy submission process where we had some excellent points made that have resulted in some changes to the document, not substantially in terms of its overall direction, but certainly in terms of detail. So the Regional Transport Committee recommended that the council approve the submission of this RLTP now to NZTA. That completes the process at this stage and allows for funding to be allocated to projects that are included in the RLTP from the National Land Transport Fund. So, I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have.
The Chair and the Deputy may want to comment because you've been fairly close to this. Lloyd, would you like to make some comments?
Thank you, Chair, and doing so, I'll formally move the resolutions that we have in front of us from the council, and I think my deputy might second it when he speaks. But for me, it's been an interesting process getting involved in this on this term of council, and Alexia and I have co-chaired this from the Otago Southland region on the way through. We've kept ourselves fully informed both at the meetings and outside of the meeting, so there's no surprises. And we, along with 3 others, jointly heard all the submissions to this plan and had a really good understanding of the issues, not only in Southland, but also in Otago and into Central. We've tried to, in the first part of the report, rewrite it better for a better understanding through the, for the reader of what has happened in Southland and Otago. And we've tried to pick up, and this is some of the stuff that came out of the submissions, pick up the flavour of the coastal shipping and more importantly the rail connections and how that may or may not work going forward. I think there's still a lot of work to do, and we've actually asked some of those participants to come and talk to us outside of the submission process about some of the challenges and work programs that they have. One of the interesting things, Mr. Chairman, was that we found that DOC has quite a large network of roading through Otago Southland as well, and we heard submissions on that, and we've tried to deal with that within the report as well. So happy to put that for your consideration, Council. You'll be approving the Southland part of that report, and it'll go through for funding, as Russell has said. And I'd just like to take the opportunity, Mr. Chairman, to formally acknowledge the work that Russell has done and his team, Gary from Otago, and some helpers around in Southland, because this isn't possible without having the consistency of approach and well, I said the gentleness of this, but Russell never got flustered. He just took all those things on board and dealt with it in a professional manner. I just want to formally acknowledge that through this process. And I've enjoyed working with him, and the same with Alan through this process. We've had a number of meetings in different places, but it's been a really, I've actually enjoyed the process, but there's been quite a bit of reading and understanding of, one of the dumb questions I asked on the way through was basically, how much can we put down this narrow corridor? Because we started off with, at the beginning of this roading network, you know, a car and a truck that looked very similar. It was just a flat deck or a back seat difference. And now we're looking at 60 tonne 9 axle units or 10 axle units, right through to electric scooters and other bikes and those sorts of things down the same corridor. So we're actually choking it to a point where I can see in the near future we're going to have to start thinking about public transport in a different way, mode shift in a different way, intercity connectedness, and how society wants to work going forward. Those things are pretty big on the agenda. They're getting bigger, so we need, we believe the Otago South and integrated approach is the right approach, and we want to keep that going. But it's one of the things that we've got a lot of challenges going forward. So with those comments, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to move as per the recommendations.
Thank you, Lloyd. Ellen may want to make a few comments.
Yeah. Again, I'll support Lloyd's comments, and particularly the input that Russell has made into this process. I mean, he's an experienced transport planner, and they are hard to come by. So we are fortunate that Russell's in our midst, and he's a young man still. Which we'd like to think he's a young man still, but I know in time we might have risk of in 3 years whether Russell's still going to be wanting to be involved in another review of this program. So that does concern, I guess, both of us of going forward as to who was going to look out for our transport issues. Otago didn't have anyone really to look out for their issues. Gary was heavily involved in passenger transport. So the plan, the Otago Southland plan, was largely written from our side. This created some pushback or an interesting part of one of the submission process when we had the Mayor Aaron Hawkins in to tell us what he thought or what Dunedin thought of the process, and we're a little bit contrary to how things were going. They felt they were being underplayed, underheard in the process, and maybe we're going to push for a change. So that'll be interesting to see as to what does transpire there. But I think from our understanding and belief that we are a region that is working well together, that the voice of Dunedin seemed a little bit singular, and we are more important, or we know best. So I guess time will tell as to whether that anything comes of it. But certainly for transport planning, we're lucky we have Russell. The feeling from a lot of the submitters was they wanted this thing called mode shift. They wanted greater cycling, walking options in their cities. They wanted better public transport, more reliable public transport, and public transport connecting out to some of those peripheral areas, particularly, again, I'm thinking of Dunedin and Otago, down to Balclutha. No passenger transport linking Balclutha and Dunedin. It's seemed to be quite a surprise, and a lot of our other smaller secondary towns don't have passenger transport and options for them going forward, particularly if we are looking to move away from everyone having a car and driving everywhere. So, how things transpire in the future is, I guess, how we're trying to shape things. And I guess recognising that the motor vehicle, certainly the internal combustion engine motor vehicle, is going to move away, and other replacements will come. Whether there will be passenger rail between Invercargill and Christchurch, again, that was some of the submitters' desire or wish that we might see passenger transport available. We had discussions with Kiwi Rail, and even from trying to get connectivity between Mosgiel and Dunedin with passenger rail, and that seemed to be an obstacle in their mind without reasonably significant spending to be done to enable passenger trains and rail freight trains to be able to pass each other. So it's not straightforward about just putting the trains back the way they were. This report now goes to Waka Kotahi, and their board decides. I imagine it's a reasonably matter of fact, I guess they approve these things, but it's still, we do our part. It all goes up to Waka Kotahi, and funding decisions are made. And I guess we've already heard of some of the funding decisions, and I'm not sure whether Russell might wish to comment on the Southern District Council's problems with. Is that out of the last plan, or is this the current plan that they've had $15 million sort of turned down? But I'm quite sure we can bring that up at this point with it as a side issue. But anyway, I'll second the motion that we have here.
Thank you, Alan. And just a couple of questions. So this is a combined presentation. They are two separate plans, and a number of years ago, Russell was probably on that initiative to work together because the roads don't stop at the boundary, and we were getting some more work done by working together. Is that still the case?
There was a spectacular example of that in the Curio Bay Haldane Road in the last RLDP period. I think that we're getting the advantage of the combined approach in terms of support for different projects. We haven't got anything that's directly linked up the way that one was, but we certainly, the approach that it's been taken in Otago Southland is more than supported by the Transport Agency and is really being encouraged across the rest of the country, although it's not necessarily being taken up to the same extent.
Thank you, Russell. Does anybody else want to comment before I put the recommendations that have been moved and seconded? If not, I will put the motion of the recommendations. All in favour will say aye.
Aye.
Against, no. Carried. So we noticed that in a nick of time. I think today was the deadline, I think. So
5 o'clock tonight, I've got to push the submit button. So. But I'd have to say that it's all sitting in there. I've taken the liberty of loading things up. To push the green button.
on that note, I will declare the extraordinary meeting of council closed, and thank you for, in this case, the Transport Committee's participation. Thank you.